The restaurant was one of those upscale places my mother loved. White tablecloths, tiny portions, prices that made your eyes water. 11 women sat around the table for her 58th birthday lunch. My mother Caroline, her 3 sisters, 5 cousins, my younger sister Amanda, and me. "So, Emma," my Aunt Patricia said with false brightness, "are you seeing anyone special?" I took a sip of water, bracing myself. "Not at the moment, no." Still. My mother's voice carried that particular tone of disappointment she'd perfected over the years. "Emma, you're 32 years old. When I was your age, I'd been married for 8 years and had 2 daughters. Times have changed, Mom." "Clearly," she said, her disapproval evident. "But Emma, don't you want a family? Children? A partner to share your life with?" "I have a very full life already." My Aunt Joyce joined in. "But darling, career success is wonderful, but it can't keep you warm at night. What do you even do again?" "Something with houses." "I'm a residential property developer," I said, keeping my voice neutral. I'd explained this 100 times, but they never seemed to retain the information. "Oh yes, you flip houses," my mother said dismissively. "Well, that's nice, dear, but it's not exactly a stable career path. What happens when the market crashes? You should have gone into teaching like Amanda. Stable income, good benefits, summers off." Amanda, my 28-year-old sister, preened slightly. She taught 4th grade and had recently gotten engaged to a high school football coach named Brad. My mother brought up Amanda's engagement at every family gathering. "Speaking of which," my cousin Melissa said, "Amanda, how are the wedding plans coming?" And they were off, discussing flowers and venues and dress fittings. I faded into the background, which was fine with me. I'd learned years ago that family gatherings were easier when I didn't draw attention to myself. My phone buzzed with a text. I glanced at it discreetly. "Call me when you can." Final paperwork came through. David. David was my real estate attorney. We'd been working on a major acquisition for the past 6 months, and if his text meant what I thought it meant, the deal had just closed. "Emma, are you checking your phone at the table?" my mother asked sharply. "That's incredibly rude." "Sorry, Mom. It's work-related." "Work can wait. This is family time." She turned back to the table. "You know what Emma's problem is? She's too focused on her little house-flipping hobby. She needs to make finding a husband her priority before it's too late." "I'm 32, not 90, I said mildly. "You might as well be 90 in dating years," Aunt Patricia said. "All the good men are taken by your age. You're competing with women in their 20s who haven't let their careers consume them. My career hasn't consumed me. I'm just selective about who I date." "Too selective, apparently," my mother said. "You're 32 and still single. That's a disappointment, Emma. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. When people ask me about my daughters, I can talk about Amanda's engagement and teaching career, and then I have to explain that my older daughter is unmarried and flips houses." The condescension in her voice stung, even though I'd heard variations of this speech for years. To my family, success meant marriage and a traditional career. My work in property development didn't fit their narrative. "Mom, I'm happy," I said quietly. "Isn't that what matters?" "Are you though? Really?" She looked at me with what might have been genuine concern under the judgment. "Living alone in that small condo, working all hours, no partner, no children. That sounds lonely to me." "My condo isn't that small. 2 bedrooms barely counts as a real home. And in that neighborhood, Emma, you could do so much better if you just apply yourself. Maybe meet a nice doctor or lawyer, someone established. Then you could live properly." My phone rang, interrupting her lecture. I glanced at the screen. David calling. This was probably about the Harrington estate deal. I should let it go to voicemail, but if the deal had closed, I needed to know. "I'm sorry, I need to take this," I said, standing up from the table. "Emma Sullivan, you will not." I answered the call as I walked toward the restaurant's lobby. "David, this better be important." "It is." "The deal closed. The Harrington estate is yours. All 47 million transferred successfully about 20 minutes ago. Congratulations, Emma. This is the biggest acquisition of your career." My heart stopped. $47 million. The Harrington estate, 15 acres of prime Los Angeles real estate with the historic mansion, guest houses and development rights. I'd been negotiating for this property for 6 months, competing against major developers and investment firms. And I'd won. "Emma? You there?" Yeah, I'm here. Just processing. The full amount transferred? No issues. Clean as a whistle. You now own the Harrington estate. The press release goes out tomorrow. You're about to be very famous in real estate circles. I walked back to the table in a daze, barely hearing my mother's complaints about my rudeness. I sat down and my phone rang again immediately. For God's sake, Emma, my mother started. This time it was my bank's private wealth manager. Without thinking, still distracted by the magnitude of what I'd just purchased, I answered and accidentally hit the speaker button. Miss Sullivan, Rachel's cultured voice filled the air around our table. I wanted to personally congratulate you. Your bid for the Harrington estate was accepted. The $47 million wire transfer has been completed successfully. This brings your total real estate portfolio to approximately $230 million in assets. I'll be scheduling a meeting next week to discuss the tax implications and... I fumbled with the phone, taking it off speaker, but the damage was done. The entire table had heard every word. I'll call you back, Rachel, I said quickly and hung up. The silence at the table was deafening. 11 women stared at me with identical expressions of shock. My mother found her voice first. $47 million? Did she say 47 million? That's what I heard, Aunt Patricia said faintly. And 230 million in assets? Aunt Joyce added, her voice climbing toward hysteria. Emma, what on earth is going on? I took a deep breath. I bought the Harrington estate. It's a property acquisition. For my development company. Your development company, my mother repeated slowly. Your house-flipping hobby is a development company worth $200 million? $230 million apparently. Though that's portfolio value, not liquid wealth. Most of it's tied up in properties. Amanda was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. You have $47 million? Just sitting in your bank account. Had $47 million. It's now tied up in the Harrington property. But yes, I had that much available for the acquisition. I paused. Well, $35 million was mine. The other 12 is from a consortium of investors I brought in to spread the risk. $35 million, my cousin Melissa whispered. You personally had $35 million? I had to secure financing and leverage some properties, but essentially yes. I realized I was gripping my water glass too tightly. Look, this isn't as dramatic as it sounds. I've been building my portfolio for 10 years. This is just business. Just business. My mother's voice was shrill. Emma, you said you flip houses. You live in a 2-bedroom condo. You drive a 4-year-old Prius. How do you have millions of dollars? I told you I'm a property developer. I've told you that repeatedly. You just never listened. Property developer sounds like a fancy term for house flipper, Aunt Patricia said defensively. It's not. House flippers buy one property, renovate it, and sell it for profit. I acquire multiple properties, sometimes entire developments or estates, redesign them, obtain permits for redevelopment, then either sell them to larger developers or develop them myself. The Harrington estate will be converted into a luxury residential complex with 35 units. Projected profit is around $80 million over 3 years. The numbers hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. $80 million profit? Amanda's voice cracked. On one project? If everything goes according to plan, yes. Though that's gross profit before taxes, operating costs, construction expenses, and investor payouts. My personal net will be closer to $18 million. $18 million, my mother said faintly. Your personal net will be $18 million. Over 3 years, yes. But that's just this one project. I have 7 other active developments at various stages. I pulled out my phone and opened my company portfolio. Sullivan Development Corporation. I founded it 8 years ago with money I made flipping 3 houses in Pasadena. Built it up from there. I turned the phone to show them the website. My company logo, professional photos of completed projects, a portfolio showcasing 15 major developments completed over the past 8 years. This is your company? My mother asked, taking the phone with trembling hands. Sullivan Development Corporation? I've seen signs for your buildings. That luxury complex in Santa Monica. The Meridian. That was one of mine. Acquired the property for $8 million, developed it into 42 luxury condos, sold out within 6 months for $63 million total. The Meridian, Aunt Joyce repeated. My friend lives there. She paid $1.4 million for her unit. You built that? My company did, yes. My mother was scrolling through the website, her face growing paler with each project she saw. The Riverside Lofts. The Harbor View development. The Westwood Towers. Emma, these are all major Los Angeles properties. I've seen these buildings. I've admired them. You developed all of these. With my team, yes. I employ 43 people full-time. Architects, construction managers, project coordinators, sales staff, legal team, marketing. Plus contractors and specialists on a per-project basis, which can be another 100 to 200 people depending on the project size. 43 employees, Melissa said, her voice barely above a whisper. You have 43 people working for you? Emma, I work in HR for a tech company and even I don't have that kind of staff. 47 now, actually. I just hired 4 new people specifically for the Harrington project. A senior architect, 2 construction supervisors, and a sustainability consultant. Amanda had pulled out her own phone and was clearly searching for information about my company. Sullivan Development Corporation. Founded 2017. CO Emma Sullivan. Estimated annual revenue $45 million. Recent projects include the Meridian in Santa Monica, Westwood Towers, Harbor View Luxury Complex. She looked up, her face completely drained of color. This is real. This is all real. You're really worth this much. The company generates about $45 million in revenue annually, yes. My personal net worth is approximately $75 million, though I should emphasize that most of that's tied up in properties, investments, and company assets. I'm not Scrooge McDuck swimming in liquid cash. $75 million, my mother whispered, setting my phone down like it might burn her. You're personally worth $75 million and you let me tell you to get a stable teaching job. You let me compare you unfavorably to Amanda's engagement. You sat there while I called you a disappointment. You didn't let me explain, I said, keeping my voice gentle despite the years of frustration bubbling up. Mom, I've tried telling you about my work for years. Every family gathering, every phone call, every time we talked. You always dismissed it as house flipping, or changed the subject to when I was going to get married. You never wanted to hear the details. But you live in a 2-bedroom condo, Aunt Patricia protested weakly, as if my living situation somehow disproved everything we'd just learned. You drive a Prius. You wear normal clothes. You don't look like someone worth millions. I live in a 2-bedroom condo in Brentwood that I own outright, I corrected. 2,200 square feet with unobstructed ocean views. I bought it for $1.8 million 5 years ago. It's now worth approximately $2.6 million. And I drive a Prius because it's fuel efficient and reliable. I spend half my time on construction sites coordinating with contractors. Why would I drive a luxury car that would just get covered in dust and scratched by equipment? But people see you in that car, Aunt Joyce said, still fixated on appearances. They make assumptions about your success based on what you drive. Let them assume whatever they want. I don't measure my worth by what strangers think of my vehicle choice. I measure it by the quality of my work and the success of my developments. The table fell into another heavy silence. I could see the gears turning in everyone's heads, recalculating years of assumptions, rewriting entire narratives they'd constructed about my life. My cousin Sarah, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. Emma, I need to ask something that might sound rude, but I'm genuinely curious. If you're this successful, why didn't you ever tell us? Why let us think you were struggling? I never said I was struggling. You all assumed that based on your own metrics of success. I took a sip of water, organizing my thoughts. And I did try to tell you. Multiple times. Remember last Christmas? I looked at my mother. I mentioned I was working on closing a major development deal. You said, "That's nice, dear," and immediately asked when I was going to settle down and find a husband like Amanda had. At Thanksgiving, I mentioned my company was expanding into commercial properties. You asked why I wasn't focusing on my personal life instead of always working. I thought you were making excuses, my mother said, her voice breaking. I thought you were hiding behind work because you couldn't find a partner. I thought I was being helpful by encouraging you to prioritize relationships. By calling me a disappointment? She flinched. I never should have said that. Emma, I'm so sorry. The thing is, Mom, I'm happy. I wake up every morning excited about my projects. I love the challenge of seeing potential in properties that others overlook. I love taking something abandoned or underutilized and transforming it into something beautiful that people want to live in. Yes, it would be nice to have a partner. But I'm not going to force a relationship just to check a box on someone else's list of what my life should look like. Amanda was still staring at her phone, reading article after article about my company. You were featured in Los Angeles Magazine last year. Rising stars in real estate development. There's a whole profile about you and Sullivan Development Corporation. You talked about the Meridian Project and your vision for sustainable luxury housing. That was a good article, I agreed. Though they made me sound more philosophical than I actually am. I just like building nice places for people to live. Nice places, Melissa repeated. Emma, the Meridian units sold for an average of $1.5 million each. My friend toured one and said they were the most beautifully designed condos she'd ever seen. We worked hard on that design. The architect I partnered with, Jennifer Koh, is incredibly talented. She understood my vision for creating luxury spaces that still felt livable, not like sterile showpieces. And you made. Aunt Patricia trailed off, clearly doing math in her head. About $18 million in profit from that project, I finished. After costs, taxes, and investor payouts. It was our biggest success before Harrington. $18 million, she breathed. From one building. From one thoughtfully planned development that met a market need, yes. But it took 2 years from acquisition to sale completion. It's not like I just waved a magic wand and money appeared. My mother was crying now, tears streaming down her carefully made-up face. I've wasted so much time worrying about the wrong things. Pushing you toward marriage. Suggesting you needed a more stable career. Comparing you to Amanda. Meanwhile, you were building one of the most successful development companies in Los Angeles. You weren't entirely wrong, I said gently. Marriage and family are important to a lot of people. They're just not my priority right now. Maybe they will be someday. But for the past 10 years, my priority has been building something meaningful. You've certainly done that, Amanda said quietly. She set her phone down and looked at me directly. I need to apologize too. I've been smug if I'm honest. I've enjoyed being the successful daughter. Having mom brag about my teaching career and my engagement while you were just flipping houses. I feel like an idiot now. You're not an idiot. You have a career you love and you're happy. That's success too. But the scale isn't even comparable, she protested. I make $52,000 a year. You just casually mentioned you made $18 million in profit from one project. Different industries, different metrics. You're shaping young minds and making a difference in kids' lives. That has value that can't be measured in dollars. That's very gracious of you to say, but we both know society doesn't actually believe that. She laughed, but it sounded pained. I've been the golden child for years because I got engaged and have a pension. You're worth $75 million. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. Melissa cleared her throat, clearly trying to move past the awkwardness. The Harrington estate. I read about that property in the Times. Multiple developers were competing for it. The article said it was one of the most sought-after properties in Los Angeles because of the location, the historical significance, and the development potential. I nodded, grateful for the shift to business talk. There were 7 serious bidders in the final round. 3 major development firms, 2 investment groups, and 2 individual developers including me. I won because I had the clearest vision for the property and the capital to move immediately without extensive financing negotiations. What's your vision? My mother asked, wiping her eyes with her napkin. I pulled up the development plans on my phone and passed it around the table. The mansion itself is protected as a historical landmark, which I think is beautiful. It's a stunning example of 1920s Mediterranean revival architecture. We're going to fully restore it and convert it into a community center and event space for the development. The restoration alone will cost about $4 million, but it's worth preserving that piece of Los Angeles history. The surrounding land, I continued as they studied the plans, will be divided into 35 luxury residential lots. We'll build custom homes that complement the historical mansion, modern architecture with nods to the original Mediterranean revival style. Think clean lines, extensive glass, indoor-outdoor living spaces, but with Mediterranean touches like terracotta details and interior courtyards. These are beautiful, my mother said, zooming in on the architectural renderings. Emma, these aren't just houses. This is thoughtful design. This is art. That's what I try to do with every project. Yes, it's a business and profit matters. But I also want to create spaces that enhance people's lives. The Harrington development will include walking trails, community gardens, a restored historical mansion that the residents can use for events. It's not just about cramming in as many expensive houses as possible. It's about creating a cohesive, beautiful community. Aunt Joyce was studying the floor plans. These homes are huge. And those price points, $3 to $8 million. 5 homes at the $8 million price point, 10 at the $5 to $6 million range, and 20 at the $3 to $4 million range. The larger homes are positioned on the premium lots with the best views and direct access to the mansion grounds. It's a 3-year project from groundbreaking to final home sales, but we already have a waiting list of over 60 qualified buyers. 60 people waiting to spend millions on homes that haven't been built yet? Sarah asked incredulously. Welcome to the Los Angeles luxury real estate market. Location, historical significance, thoughtful design, and scarcity drive demand. We're only building 35 homes on 15 acres, which gives each property substantial land. Compare that to typical developments that might cram in 100 units on the same space. My mother handed my phone back, her expression complex. Pride mixed with regret mixed with something that might be all. When you describe it like that, I can see it's not just about money. You genuinely love this work. I do. Every project is a puzzle. How do you take this space and transform it into something people want to live in? How do you balance profitability with aesthetics? How do you create community while respecting privacy? Those challenges energize me. More than finding a husband? Aunt Patricia asked, then seemed to realize how that sounded. I'm sorry, that came out wrong. No, it's a fair question, I said. And honestly, right now, yes. I'm 32. I have time to find a partner if that's what I want. But opportunities like the Harrington estate don't wait. If I'd been focused on dating instead of building my business, I wouldn't have been in a position to bid on this property. Someone else would have acquired it, someone else's vision would have shaped those 15 acres. So you chose career over relationship, Amanda said. I chose to prioritize building something meaningful during my 20s and early 30s. That doesn't mean I've sworn off relationships forever. It just means I wasn't willing to force something that wasn't right just to meet someone else's timeline. My phone rang again. My project manager for the Westwood Towers development. I'm sorry, I really need to take this, I said, standing up. It's about one of my current projects. This time no one objected. My mother just nodded. Of course. Take your call. I stepped away from the table and this time no one complained. When I returned 5 minutes later, the conversation at the table had clearly been about me. Everyone stopped talking as I sat down. Everything okay with the property? My mother asked. Yes. Just coordinating the initial survey and inspection schedule. We want to move quickly on this. $47 million, Aunt Joyce said, shaking her head. I still can't wrap my mind around it. Emma, what does someone even do with that much money? Develop it into something worth more, I said with a slight smile. That's the business model. Are you happy? My mother asked suddenly. Really, truly happy? Not with the money or the success, but with your life. I thought about that question. His mom. I am. I wake up excited about my projects. I love the challenge of seeing potential in properties others overlook. I have a great team, meaningful work, and the freedom to live life on my terms. Would a partner be nice? Sure. But I'm not going to settle just to check a box on someone else's list of what my life should look like. I'm sorry I made you feel like you needed to, she said. Emma, I'm so proud of you. I should have said that years ago. Thank you. That means a lot. Amanda raised her glass. To Emma. The most successful person at this table and apparently the only one who knew it. Everyone laughed and the tension broke slightly. We returned to eating our overpriced lunch, but the dynamic had shifted fundamentally. I wasn't the disappointing older daughter anymore. I was Emma Sullivan, CEO of a development company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Press release going out tomorrow at 9 a.m. Hope you're ready for the attention. I wasn't sure I was ready, but I'd spent 10 years building toward this moment. The Harrington estate was the biggest acquisition of my career, and it would put Sullivan Development Corporation on the national map. Tomorrow people would know what my family was just learning, that I'd built something extraordinary while they weren't paying attention. As lunch wound down and we prepared to leave, my mother pulled me aside. "I've been a terrible mother about this," she said quietly. "Pushing you toward marriage, dismissing your work, comparing you to Amanda. I was measuring you against the wrong standard. You wanted what you thought was best for me. I wanted what was familiar to me," she corrected. "Marriage, children, a conventional life. I couldn't see that you were building something far more ambitious than anything I'd ever imagined. I'm still the same person, Mom. I just finally have proof that my work matters." "It always mattered," she said. "I just wasn't looking." We left the restaurant, and I drove home in my practical Prius to my 2-bedroom condo that my family had thought was disappointingly small. But now they knew it was a $2.6 million Ocean View property owned by a woman worth $75 million who just acquired the Harrington estate for $47 million. I was 32 and single. And apparently I was no longer a disappointment. I was just Emma Sullivan doing exactly what I'd set out to do, building something remarkable one property at a time. The phone call had come at the perfect moment. 5 minutes after my mother declared me a disappointment, my success had literally announced itself at maximum volume. Sometimes timing really was everything. And as I sat in my condo that evening, looking at the development plans for the Harrington estate spread across my dining table, I realized something important. I'd never needed my family's validation to know I was successful. But it was still nice to finally be seen.